drawing is an embodied practice. There are a lot of different ways that we can kind of be somatically oriented, right? Like it can be more like dance or yoga, but drawing, we're using our body to create something concrete. It's not just a visualization in our head.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. I've got two quick things to tell you before we jump into the interview. Create Your Program opens for registration really soon on March 13th. You want to enroll in CYP in that first week to get a special bonus training. To learn more about Create Your Program, go over to rebeltherapist.me/create. Also, I'm hosting a free open coaching call on Thursday, March 14th at 12 noon Pacific. And I would love to see you there. I'm going to be answering questions and spotlight coaching current and former clients as well as all podcast listeners. So please grab your spot. You can head over to rebeltherapist.me/question to get your spot. I'm going to be talking during that open coaching call a little bit about how Create Your Program works because we're going to be open for registration right then. And mostly, I'm going to be answering questions and doing spotlight coaching. So come talk to me about your business. Okay, let's get into the interview. Leah had been helping people with self-compassion for years, but when she started using art journaling in her program, it came together in a much more powerful way. You're about to hear how she transformed her program over the last few years, why she loves running it, and why she's got fewer therapy sessions in her schedule. Leah Seigen Shinraku is an artist, teacher, licensed therapist, and founder of the Center for Creative Self-Compassion. Through her transformative program, Everyday Self-Compassion, she helps people who struggle with self-judgment connect with their innate creativity and joy so they can feel more calm, connected, confident, and playful in meeting the uncertainty of being alive. Welcome. I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So will you start off by telling us who you work with in your program? Who are the folks who tend to be in your program?
Sure. A lot of them are self-proclaimed recovering perfectionists. A lot of them also either in their professional life or in some way in their everyday life are like helpers, caregivers of some kind, or often they tend to have that orientation to the world. They want to contribute, they want to help, and they often feel a lot more comfortable being kind to other people and not necessarily paying attention to what they need. So they tend to maybe also some of them, at least for sure, would self-identify as people pleasers. Mm-hmm. So they're aware that it's almost like a point of pride or an identity. Like I'm a helpful person. I put others first. But then at some point they realize, well, there's a cost to that, and I care about compassion, but I leave myself out. Mm-hmm. So a lot of them actually have some experience in therapy. They know what self-compassion is often as a concept, but they have a hard time figuring out, what do I actually do? Like, I know I need to be kinder to myself, but how do I do it?
Yeah. Do you notice them when they get to you having hit some kind of certain obstacle or some kind of certain like, oh shit kind of moment, like where, this isn't working anymore, something like that? Or does it seem to be more gradual?
It really depends. And for some people, self-compassion is something that they've talked about in therapy for a long time. And I think they can get to a point of frustration with themselves, and honestly, sometimes frustration with therapy, because it can feel like, okay. Like, I understand. I know what it is, but what do I do? Like, I know I need to be kinder to myself, but like, what do I do? What does that mean? And so I think there is sometimes a frustration that way. I think also people recognize how their relationship with themselves, when they're not kind to themselves, it impacts their relationships, all their other relationships. And so sometimes there can be relationship issues that people bump up against, and that can bring them in. Or the desire for a relationship and feeling like, I don't know how to be kind to myself. How am I going to do well in a relationship? Or they know that it's been an obstacle in a sense in the past. So that kind of thing. I think also sometimes people, especially around the holidays, they realize that when they're around their family, it's hard for them to be kind to themselves. So I think in this time after the holidays, it's front of mind as well.
Yeah.
And beginning of the year, it's front of mind for a lot of people because they want a fresh start, or they want a change, but they don't know how. So I think sometimes there is like a specific thing, and other times it's just this general sense of like, I know this is really important and I haven't been able to figure this one out.
Yeah. Like you said, like, I get it that is what I need to do, but like the how, and like, how the heck do I do it? And so then they come to you ready to start working on it in a different way. So tell us about your program. How does it work?
Sure. Well, it focuses on art journaling as the what, the what do I do? We do meditation as well, but the main focus is art journaling. It's translating the knowledge onto the page and integrating it. And what I've experienced personally and what I hear from students over and over again is how big of a difference that makes. That it's not a way that they've learned before. And when they practice it this way, it's in them, it's embodied. Drawing is an embodied practice. There are a lot of different ways that we can kind of be somatically oriented, right? Like it can be more like dance or yoga, but drawing, we're using our body to create something concrete. It's not just a visualization in our head. It's, in the case of the way I teach, often drawing ourselves on the page and seeing what we're saying that's not accurate, in the case of the way the inner critic communicates often. And then also seeing other choices that we have and being able to visualize it. And I think of it as we're creating our own virtual reality on the page. But we're not doing it with like AI or technology. It's very hands-on. And I think there's something important about that, especially today, in this moment that we're living, where so much is getting generated by non-humans, honestly.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of what it might look like on the page, or what the process might look like as someone is beginning their art journaling?
Like what a simple practice might be that they might do. Yeah. Well, I might lead them through considering what are some of the unkind things that you say to yourself, and have them note that down on the page. There's a practice I do sometimes where I have them draw one of those thoughts. Having looked at some of them, we'll just take one to work with, and they'll draw it. They'll draw themselves in a very simple way, draw it above them. And then I have them draw like a stand-up mirror around that little person on the page and that thought. And then we draw another them looking at that mirror with kindness. So literally, this is what I'm doing. This is kind of where I'm stuck. There is another way to relate to myself. And then they can see it. And it's a different kind of experience to see that and to see yourself. And sometimes, people struggle to really feel connected to that compassionate part of themselves early on. So then I would say, well, let's draw someone else. Let's draw someone else looking at you and expressing kindness and compassion. And we'll start there. So there's a way in, even if you don't feel like you can access that part of yourself quite yet, because I always want my students to feel genuine and not like they're faking something and like they're pretending to be somewhere that they're not yet. So it's so important. So if they can't quite access that part of themselves, it could be someone else. It could even be their pet.
Yeah.
You know, so we draw, I almost always draw my cat when I make a little drawing. And it could just be their pet with a little heart.
Yeah.
You know, relating to them with love while they're kind of feeling stuck. But there's that presence, and that to be able to see it is so important.
So that first image that you were mentioning, the person with the unkind thought, is that usually the unkind thought? Is it usually drawn as like a shape or actual words, or like what do people usually do?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of guiding, you know, and I think people, especially early on, they want to be told how to do it.
Yeah, you heard that in me. I'm like, okay, how? What is the shape? What color is it?
It's more like a cartoon. Like you would have a thought bubble right above your head. And so, but I also always say, if there's some other way you want to do this, if there's some other way you want to draw yourself or express this, do it. Because I always want it to feel genuine and not just, oh, well, this is what she says I have to do, even though it feels weird and I want to do it a different way. You know, do it your way. And I really celebrate that when, you know, after we do the practices, then we often have time to talk about it. And when a student's like, oh, I did it this other way, I'm like, great, do it. Everybody do it. Everybody do it the way that makes sense to you. It has so much more impact.
So cool. So then how does the program work? Like how many weeks long is it? What does the kind of process look like that people go through over that time?
It's 8 weeks right now. Honestly, there are more things I want to teach that don't fit into these 8 weeks. And so right now I'm about to teach it again, but I'm thinking maybe the next time after this, there's this thing I want to teach about that doesn't fit, right? Because right now it's sort of full. So it might be longer at some other point, or it might be that I add some other separate class that teaches this other thing. But anyway, it's 8 weeks, and there's also, so it's 8 weeks, 2 hours a week of class, and then there's also a retreat halfway through.
Ooh.
So,
and this is all virtual?
Yeah, it's all online. And right now every time I teach it, I offer 2 cohorts. So I offer an evening cohort and a morning cohort. And then they together, they share the same retreat. So they're separate, but then they have the retreat on a Saturday morning Pacific time, and people can usually make that. And so how does it work? Well, each week really builds on the next. And, you know, like I said, a lot of people come in knowing what self-compassion is, but not everybody does. And it's also useful to have a refresher. So the first week, we really focus on just the fundamentals of what self-compassion even is, but we also focus on building safety in the group. So it's really important to me that people feel safe and comfortable, because it's not a therapy group at all, but, you know, it's a vulnerable topic. So I want people to feel safe, and that's always the first thing. So we spend some time that first week doing that, learning about self-compassion. And every class has 2 halves. So the first half is more checking in and meditation and didactic. We have a little break, and then it's art journaling for the whole second half of class to integrate whatever we learned. So first week is self-compassion. Then we talk about, in the second week, we talk about uncertainty, which is a topic that I think is extremely important in our relationship with ourselves, and often the root of why a lot of people are beating themselves up, because they think they're supposed to know things that there's actually no way to know. So to me, it's central to self-compassion is uncertainty. Being able to relate to uncertainty and not think it's a problem or like a mistake or a shortcoming that you don't know everything.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
And it's not something that I often hear talked about, but it's personally in my life, it's been a core thing. And I think when the pandemic hit, it made it so clear to me. I was almost like, okay, people are ready now. They understand that uncertainty is a thing that they, need to be able to relate to. So to me, that was like a really strangely liberating time. I was like, okay, now everybody else is like as aware of uncertainty as I am. So we're gonna really talk about it, and they've been very receptive to that for sure. So yeah, that I'm really, I think is super important. That's why it's like right after we know what self-compassion even is, we have to talk about uncertainty. And then, we do these kind of 2 weeks that sort of go together. The first one, we talk about feelings and needs and the relationship between feelings and needs. Because some say the core question of self-compassion is, what do I need? And if we don't know what we need, we don't know how to be kind to ourselves. And one of the ways we can get clearer about what we need is to find out how we feel. And, there are certain feelings we have when our needs are being met, and there are other feelings we have when our needs aren't being met. And a lot of people, grew up in situations where they weren't supposed to have needs, and so they aren't supposed to have certain feelings either. So it's really important that we shine a light on that and highlight, I think, the relationship between feelings and needs, because then in the next week, we talk about boundaries. And feelings tell us what we need, and then our needs inform our boundaries. So I see them as this sequence that we kind of need to know the way they fit together. And after that, we have our retreat.
What do you do on the retreat?
We do, it's very resourcing. We don't do a lot of digging. We do some of the practices we've already learned, and then we do some mindful eating and movement where we let our body take the lead. So instead of telling our body what to do, we listen for what our body wants to do, and we do that. And some art journaling. So for me, it's really fun. It's silent mostly for students. I'm the one talking. And then in the end, they can talk to each other and me and process it, but they don't have to talk for most of it, which is a relief for most people.
How long is the retreat?
It's 3 hours on a Saturday morning Pacific time.
Okay. And then what happens after the retreat?
After the retreat, we do a module on identity and self-esteem. So there was, for a period of time, a big focus on self-esteem as this marker of mental health, like high self-esteem equals higher mental health, or, you're more healthy. But, and you probably know this, but in the last 20 plus years, that's gotten completely disproven. And it's more, how stable is your self-esteem? And that's more the marker. And like, what's your self-esteem based on? And if it's coming from external sources, it's inherently unstable. And it can be hard to feel a sense of identity if our self-esteem is unstable as well. So we look at, how does self-compassion give us an alternative to sort of traditional ways that people seek self-esteem? Because self-compassion is a way to have a sense of who you are that's not dependent on external circumstances or achievements. Gives you a way to feel good about yourself and a way to understand who you are, that it doesn't matter whether you have that title or that salary or whatever the thing is, that trophy. There's a way that you can feel valuable. Yeah, all that.
All of it.
All that.
When everything falls away.
Right.
Or if everything falls away. Yeah.
Right. And I think for a lot of people, like during the pandemic time, that was sort of a time when a lot of things fell away. Yeah. And so I think there's something for me that's really different about teaching self-compassion post-pandemic, because I was teaching about it before. It's like people are more aware of some of these things coming in than they were before because of that experience. So it feels different for me to be teaching it on the other side. So let's see. So right, identity and self-esteem. Then we talk about parts and wholeness. So this idea that we are each a system of parts. And I know you're familiar with this concept. It's, it's part of a lot of different theories out there in psychology. And I've found it to be very helpful because there's no one part of us that defines us. So, to just get that sense of like, I kind of can't be put in a box. I can't say I'm this or that. I'm this and that. So to help people get more familiar with that and that way of seeing themselves and making space for the different parts. And then after that, week 7, we talk about a specific part, which is the inner critic, which, most people coming into a self-compassion class really want to know about the inner critic. But I talk about it toward the end because I think we need all of this other information to really relate to it in a way that is going to, that has the most potential for helping them change and relate differently to this particular part of themselves. So we look at, where does the inner critic come from? What's it trying to do? What are some of the fictions that it tells? And where are the choice points when we can kind of recognize that and make a different decision about how we want to relate to ourselves? And then the last week, in week 8, we focus on the compassionate self, which really the whole time we've been looking at dimensions of the compassionate self. So we bring it together in that last week and do a bit of review. And then also bring it together in probably the drawing that's the simplest drawing that we do is the one we do on the last day. But because of everything that's come before, it has so much meaning baked into it because of everything that everyone has learned. So I feel I just love teaching it. I'm excited to be about to be teaching it again. And I love sharing it with people.
Oh, that's so cool. We'll get right back to this episode. I just wanted to pause for a moment to tell you about my offer for therapists and healers who want to expand beyond private practice and launch their own programs. You get to be in a group of driven and open-hearted folks like yourself, and you'll be launching your own pilot program. This all happens in my 10-week container, Create Your Program. Go to rebeltherapist.me/create to learn more. Okay, let's get back into the episode. So how different is it than it was in its first iteration?
It's pretty different. So the first iteration, it was only 4 weeks, actually. I think the first one was 4 weeks. And then I think I did a 6-week one, and then I did an 8-week. So I think it went along. Also, at the beginning, I was terrified of sharing these creative practices, of bringing the art journaling really in. I knew I wanted to. It wasn't even fully formed for me, but a lot of it was a fear of, I think, like not being taken seriously or being seen as, I don't know, frivolous or just not serious, I guess, not legitimate. I don't know. But, I just continue to do it myself, share it with students, share it with clients, look at the research.
Yeah.
And I just continued to feel more empowered and validated. And now I don't really have a problem at all because it's so fun. And I think people need to be having more fun. And I think of it as it's fun and not superficial. And there's nothing wrong with superficial fun, but that's how I think of what I'm doing. And so I feel a lot more confident in it. But at the beginning, not at all. In the beginning, I was like hiding the creative part of it.
So when you run it now, do you feel more, this is partly me projecting because this has been my experience running my program. Like I now feel just so much more fully myself when I show up to every session. I'm wondering, has that been happening for you?
Totally, totally. As soon as I was able to share the art,
Mm.
it changed everything for me as a teacher. And it just freed me up to, to be goofy. I mean, I've always been somewhat goofy, but I think I feel so much more present, and I'm teaching something that is 100% mine. Not in a possessive way, but more in like, this springs from inside of me. And of course, I have my influences, and I have, programs I've taken and taught that get put in here in little ways here and there. But I can feel like I know why I'm doing this, and I know exactly where this came from. And I also know when I need to like adjust it and do something a little different, and I can. And yeah, it feels very freeing. And I've I still do see some therapy clients, and I do it with them sometimes. If it makes sense, we do a drawing. I have my overhead setup is just always ready to go. And then I've started to take on coaching clients where this is like what we do is like, we do it through the drawing, and that's so fun. And I just started really realizing, I want to do more of that, and just inviting people in. And that's been really fun to do that. Because it's almost like we can do like a custom drawing for them, like for their specific situation. And that's so fun.
Very cool. So those coaching clients who you're working with one-on-one, did they usually find you through doing your group program first?
Mm-hmm. Ooh. That's how I prefer. That's what I prefer. Because they need to kind of have that foundation, I think, to just even be ready for it. And yeah, I have the 8-week program, and then, students wanted to keep working. They wanted a way to keep doing this, because it can be really hard to, any kind of practice, it can be hard to maintain on your own. And they really also like the community aspect, because it's a cohort model, and they really like that. So I offer an ongoing community for students that want to just keep going. And we meet twice a month, and we have a theme, and we're doing this. And so right now, it's either folks who have taken the program and or folks who are in my alumni community who I'm working with one-on-one in coaching. And that feels good to me. We already know each other, and they're just ready to draw, and they understand. There's not a lot that I have to explain.
With the alum community, how long of a commitment do people make when they sign up for that?
Some of them sign up for a year, some of them sign up for a quarter, some of them sign up on a monthly basis. It all depends. Yeah, and I'm flexible, though it's only open 3 times a year. So if they decide, I want to take a break, and they don't want to keep coming, then they can do that. But then they have to wait like 4 months to come back if they want to. So I like to do it that way, so that there's sort of like a stable community, where there's only kind of influx a few times a year. That's what I want. So that's what I'm offering for them.
What would you say, if you haven't tracked it, just sort of like your guess off the top of your head of like, what percentage of folks from the group offer end up doing the alumni group at some point?
It really depends on the cohort. Some more than others. If I had to guess, I would say like 30%, maybe 30, 40%, something like that.
That's interesting. That's about, it just happens to be about the percentage of people who end up doing my follow-up program after my first program.
But, sometimes they don't do it right away.
Yeah.
I had someone join like a year or 2 after they had been in it.
That
so
makes sense.
It's hard to track. Like sometimes it's usually they join right away once the class has ended, but sometimes they come back, and I haven't had any interaction with them or anything, but they've been hearing from me, because I send an email out most weeks.
You do.
I've been good about that this year, and it's been fun. So yeah, it can happen that way too. It doesn't have to be immediate.
So how do people usually originally find you?
There are a lot of ways. So one way is I also teach a class sort of under the umbrella of San Francisco Zen Center. It's a 4-week class.
Mm-hmm.
And so I teach that twice a year right now. And so people take that with me. And then usually I time it so that that's happening right before one of the longer ones is happening. So if they wanted to, they could just come into the 8-week one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a way. I also have several just like free things on my website that people find that they're looking for, and that kind of gets them onto my email list, and then they learn about what I'm doing. So it's funny, the most popular page on my website is my self-compassion poetry page. If you Google self-compassion poetry, I will be number 1.
Oh, how cool.
Which is so exciting for me. And so they get there, they're looking for self-compassion poetry, and then I have this 30-day email series, basically, where they get a poem every day, like a self-compassion poem every day, and a little practice that they can do. And I think that gives them, I considered revamping that to make it more visual art oriented. Right now it's not, it's just the poetry.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it gives people a sense of me and who I am and how I think about self-compassion in this more creative way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a way. I also played around with in the last few months. So I'm about to offer a free workshop this coming weekend, but in the last few months, I put it on my site as like an on-demand workshop that people could watch for a limited time. And then that gives them, and there is art journaling in that workshop. And so that really gives them a sense of me and what it's all about.
With recording that workshop, did you record it live and then provide it on demand?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you offered it once, like this workshop is coming up live, and people signed up? And then you took that recording and you made it on demand. How has the on demand one been working for you in terms of like getting people?
It's early days. I don't totally know because, so what they can do after they've watched it is join a wait list so that they'll be the first to know when the program opens. And I mean, I think, I'm just looking because I have a little board in front of me. I think so some people have signed up early and half of them watched that workshop on demand. Some of them watched it and I gave them an option to sign up for, like, they might not want the spring cohort. They might want summer or fall. So they might be taking it later in the year. I don't know yet. So once this kind of cycle is done, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to put the recorded workshop up and just see how it goes. Because I think if I don't do that, then they have to wait until July to do, to have that experience. So I think it's worth more experimentation for sure.
Yeah. I'm also thinking for the workshop recording, it's like if somebody signs up for that and that's how they get on your email list, whether or not they actually watch it, it seems like one hypothesis is that they're a good candidate for your program, because they were looking for something that's really more high involvement, right? Like they were looking for something where they would actually be doing some work, putting in some time. So that's just an interesting experiment. It looked great when I looked at your site and I saw it there. I was like,
thanks.
Really excited.
Thank you. Another way that they find it is when I am about to offer it live, I do run some ads on Facebook. It's the only time that I do. And it brings them in, it definitely does. And I'm thinking I might run ads to the evergreen one as well once I offer it again. I didn't do that yet, but I think I might do that just as an ongoing thing and see how that goes.
Yeah. Have you been able to track have you been able to track knowing who came into your program, who maybe found you through a meta ad?
Not with any scientific accuracy. I think I recently created a new website, migrated to a new site. And I think with Google Analytics, I'm still kind of working out that part of it, like how to track who's coming from where. And my pixel, I don't know if my pixel is in the right place for Meta.
So
yeah,
like,
no.
and I know some people are probably listening and they're like, this is confusing.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
just in case it's helpful, like, what the person who taught me Facebook and Instagram ads is Claire Pelletreau. And what she always taught me was like, completely duplicate everything. And like, only like, so if you're running an ad to something, have it be that like that opt-in page is only found by somebody who
I see.
clicked through for the ad.
Yeah.
And that way it's kind of like easier to track. But
that's smart. Okay. I'm going to implement that next round.
Cool.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah. That's easy too. It's like, I can wrap my mind around that. That is
even if it's tedious, it's not complicated. Like,
No, not at all. Yeah. Thank you.
So when you run your program, about how many people are in there each cohort?
It really depends. I've had a cohort like as small as 6, and I've had one as big as like 15. It just depends. I don't always know why.
Yeah.
Why bigger, why smaller?
Yep. Absolutely. It's so hard to know. And we can always like guess what's going on.
Yep.
But yeah.
I'll say too, there, sometimes I also, I have students from all over the world, and some of them don't actually ever come live, but they want to watch the video. Like they still feel a part of it. I have a student even who lives in New York, who's like extremely enthusiastic, but her schedule, like I've never talked to her live. I've never like had a live, like in real time interaction with her, but she's extremely enthusiastic. She watches every video. She does every practice. Like she lets me know. So there's also that element of like, there are people in the cohort who aren't in the cohort, like they're in the cohort, but they're not there live. So there are different ways that people experience it.
Yeah. I've been that person before who is like, seems like a lurker, but I'm completely enthusiastic about the program I'm in. Yeah. So I can relate to that.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to know, like, that's real. Like there are people like that. And just because they're not showing up doesn't mean they hate the program or anything. It's just like, they maybe can't.
Exactly. And they're still benefiting from the fact that it's a cohort. Like they're still in it week by week, like following. Yeah. Like if I have somebody from Australia, for example, that's usually what's going to happen, because otherwise time is terrible for them.
It's really terrible. Yep.
Yeah. When you look at your audience, like you're sending out these wonderful emails just about every week. Is your email list growing over time? Is it staying kind of steady? How's that happening?
Yeah, it definitely grows. And it really grows when I'm doing the free live workshop. I mean, the ads are working. My ads are, all I do is boost a post. I don't do anything crazy. I just boost a post on from my Facebook page and try to have it have an interesting drawing, and it appeals to people. And and then they join the email list. So it is growing. I would say there are these little spurts, when I'm doing the free program, but it's pretty, I get people signing up for one thing or another, pretty much every day, even if, it's not this time before the free workshop.
So your email list must be in the thousands by now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Awesome. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
How has this changed your therapy practice? Like, are you doing less of your therapy practice? Like, what's the change there?
I definitely am. Well, one thing is I'm incorporating art journaling into my therapy practice when it feels like appropriate for different people. And that's really fun, and they enjoy that a lot. But in terms of like me and how I'm relating to my therapy practice, honestly, I haven't taken on a new therapy client in 4 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I am very committed and love working with my ongoing clients.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, I'm not taking on new therapy clients. So I'm not, like leaving the therapy world, but I don't have the appetite for new therapy clients.
Mm-hmm.
But I am discovering that I do enjoy art therapy. Not art therapy. That's not what I do. Strike that. Art journaling coaching clients. I have a lot of energy and enthusiasm for that. And it kind of surprised me because I thought, oh, I think I want to do less one-on-one work, but this feels different to me. So I'm going with it. I'm going with it. And my goal has been to just continue in a way that feels, aligned for me. Just to continue expanding the non-therapy side of my business and putting energy into growing that side of my business. And I'm not putting energy into growing my therapy practice, but I'm also not closing it down.
Yeah.
That's not, that doesn't feel right to me either. That's not what I want either. Yeah, because I really love the people I work with and enjoy that work.
That's so cool. I love hearing
Thanks.
that. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
Really sharing so deeply about your business, your program, your work. So helpful.
You're welcome. Thank you, Annie.
Yay. All right, that was awesome. Learn more from Leah at creativeselfcompassion.com. I want to thank Ames Palms for editing this podcast. If you found this episode supportive, please do a couple of things. Share it with your favorite therapist or healer. That is absolutely the most important way we reach more people. And if you haven't already, please hit follow and give us 5 stars. That is so helpful to this podcast. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.